We are going to talk about the flight and wonderful Pete Voss. He has been around this sport for a very, very long time. Obviously a great friend of ours. He's also a skydive school instructor, PFF instructor, amongst many other ratings he holds. So Pete, I am going to sign it off to you and allow you to start your portion of this.
Thanks, Allison. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to try not to shout because I know I can wash this microphone out. So thank you very much to Brian and Monica for some great presentations, and they're going to follow the CSPA flow. I'd like to draw your attention to the aforementioned PIM 2A and PIM 2B. I know we've had lots of time on our hands during COVID, and it makes perfect sense that everybody has now memorized all the PIM literatures from 1 to 5. There'll be a test shortly, and it'll be for prizes. So PIM 2A is in section 4, page 49 to 62. They're available electronically, so when you're tired of Netflix and you've watched everything that you can ever imagine on the internet, you can switch over to the CSPA website and you can binge on PIM 2A and PIM 2B, particularly these sections because they're the most important, of course. We're going to talk about the flight, and that's covered both at the 2A and 2B level. So depending on your level of study and the level of experience you have, you may experience some new material as you move through those PIM modules, of course. So 49 to 62 in section 4 and 2A, and section 4 also in PIM 2B, around about 30 pages, from 77 to about 103. So super helpful to have those really nicely updated literature, and they're really well done and easy to navigate. So a good idea maybe to visit through that when you're got some spare time on your hands after you've maintained your gear and worked on all your to-do list. So we're going to talk about the flight and you know, the nap time for most of us old people when we're in the old man seat and we've got 30, 40 minutes to catch up on our sleep. That's what lots of us look forward to on those hot days when you're loading back to back. But the flight has got some fantastic opportunities for us to really make our skydive an even better experience with our plans and things like that. So it's broken down into some sections like usual. We have a section about the pilot, all the things we need to know when we're interacting with pilot, things that we should do and not do. Of course, there's the boarding, actually getting onto this aircraft that we plan on usually not landing with. The takeoff section, the takeoff portion of our time in the airplane. During that time, of course, there is aircraft unusuals and aircraft emergencies. And then naturally, the moment we paid for, the door opening and our moment of exit. So there's some things to come along in that little segment of our skydive. So you paid your money, you took the shuttle, or you did whatever you had to do. And now there it is, sitting on the tarmac somewhere, an airplane inviting you to join it as it takes its flight. Couple things we need to know ahead of it, of course. As experienced jumpers, you may be well aware of this, but airplanes are usually not aware of us as pedestrians and passengers, particularly the observer and perhaps the student or passenger. So we all need to play a really important part in the safety of these people. Propellers can turn on any moment without a notice. Nobody who isn't a skydiver understands what clear prop means. Cessnas are not usually loaded with the propellers running, but some of our larger planes can be. So those are incredibly important moments when people who aren't used to being airside will be excited and want to get a picture, or they just don't know how to behave around an aircraft. So we all have a role to play in the safety of ourselves, novice jumpers, experienced jumpers, visiting skydivers. We need to be mindful before we even get to the plane. As you know from your first jump course and training and habits that we all have, you want to make sure you're approaching the aircraft from the side or the area that's the safest towards it. Make eye contact with the pilot. Sometimes they're on the radio. They may or may not know about us coming to get there. So pilots have lots of things to do before they're ready to take us. They have fuel, they have contact with a number of different radio channels and things like that. So they're very busy getting the plane ready for us. So they're not always ready to greet us and do things that we think are not really important. So pilots have lots of things to do on the ground in their checks and stuff like that. So beware, they're not always ready for a conversation. Don't touch anything that belongs to the pilot. Don't put a lot of pressure on the seats, and of course, don't drag yourself around there when you're climbing. It's great and very courteous to speak to the pilot and communicate with them on what's going on with the load, what the plans are for us. Hopefully, before the engine starts, maybe you get a climb out or something like that. It's not a bad idea to sort of look around the airport and check for the conditions with windsocks and see what the surface winds are doing. That's always helpful for you to keep in your mind as you're about to take flight. It's good to talk about the jump run. Oftentimes the pilots are GPS spotting and they've got that determined already. But having a conversation, if you're doing something maybe that's a long spot or a downwinder or something like that, have an idea for long climb outs and whether you want the door at a certain point. So all these kinds of things are important to communicate. Obviously a lot easier if the engine's not running and you can have some time to calmly speak and plan out with the pilot. Doesn't take a lot of time, but like everything, a good plan has got that. So even before you're about to speak to the pilot, depending on how much time you've got, great idea to do your gear check. You never get into an airplane without checking 3x3. So the checks of 3 are, of course, your handles and harness, and also any accessories that you've got, plus 2 pins. So all gear, rig, dial, camera, anything that you've got with you. Now is the time to realize that you've forgotten something, and not after the door closes. Okay, so the pilot is going to do his thing. They're going to want some loading. Now, even small and, of course, large aircraft are going to be pretty particular with center of gravity. The Skyvan, as we know, has got a red stripe down the middle of it, and we all have to be extremely mindful about loading it, getting excited, and creeping towards the door, and having some discipline about keeping our pilot safe, as well as keeping the jumpers ahead of us and behind us in our mind. So you've spoken to the pilot, you've got your jump run and winds aloft and ready to do that. So they're very busy. Finally, the door's closed, you're seated, and you can begin to get yourself comfortable. So you've loaded correctly according to the groups. Manifest has maybe dictated where you're going to sit, and you've done some exit some opportunities as well. Center of gravity should be in your mind. Remaining still, seat belts, and proper procedures on board are going to be something that you're going to role model, and you're also going to practice, because you need to be aware of what the requirements are in the plane. So hot loading, it's not often we see hot loading, especially with Cessnas, but obviously some of the larger planes will do that. Be aware and ask for some advice or perhaps direction if you see that the plane will be loaded. Often we'll have a load master or an experienced jumper designated to bring the ladder out and get us onto the tailgate. So we're rolling down the runway, heading for one end of the runway or the other, and you can maybe make some observations there. Look at the direction of takeoff and maybe get an idea of what the surface winds are doing. Again, if you're close to the landing area or not, surface winds are usually pretty good indication on the runway compared to where the landing field is going to be. So if you're not sure, try your best to give it an orientation as the plane is climbing, to see where you are, where the drop zone is, where your compass points are. Some people are really good with direction. Some people are horrible and it's just have no idea. But it's a good idea to get sort of a visual from where you are. It's a great time right after takeoff to look at your altimeter and make a notice that it's actually going up and actually working. So that's always a good time to check on that and look for some indications that your equipment is going well. Oftentimes you'll hear people listening in their ear for audibles and things like that. So around about that time, you're approaching 1500. People are often in a big hurry to get their seatbelts off. Personally, I'm not in a big hurry to get my seatbelt off, especially below sort of 1800 to 2000 feet. Be aware of your drop zone rules, the specifications your owners are going to have for, am I landing with the plane? What kind of aircraft emergencies are we looking at? Hard decks, reserve rides, if it's out and down and dirty, or if you're landing with the plane. So if you're not sure, and there are some recommendations in the PIMS, have that conversation in your drop zone orientation. I've known drop zones that have actually practiced with their instructors. They practiced emergency exits. So that's bold. I'm not making that recommendation, but it has happened. Being aware of it, and as an instructor with students on board, it's probably good practice to at least have that conversation with the pilot and have yourself aware of, okay, what situations above certain altitudes, below certain altitudes are we going to do, what we're going to do. So up to about 1,800 feet, I'm visually and psychologically preparing myself for a very rapid exit because, you know, if the airplane is going to do something down and low, you want to be out and quick. So just have that sort of visualization and that preparation ahead of time is pretty good. So like I said, AAD settings and other things with the drop zone orientation should include what are the directions. And let's not forget who's in charge of the airplane. No, it's not us, the skydiver. It's going to be the pilot in command. Chain follows pilot in command into an instructor if you have students under your control. So those type of discussions are made during the instructor and pilot awareness and briefings for emergencies and things like that. So pop and pops are cool. If you have to be directed out of the airplane before it's time to go, that's not going to be a decision you're going to argue with the pilot in command. And remember, a sign I saw once on a DC-3 said clearly, it was embroidered, it said no RW during emergency exits. So just make sure you've gotten out of there regardless of the altitude. You're not going to do a speed star and you're not going to do anything other than clear pull. Another thing that's helpful below 3,000 feet on the way up, I'm always thinking about this. I got to get out the door right now. Where am I going to land? Also, in which direction am I going to land, and will people be following me? You're the first one out. It might be on you to decide a nice, level, predictable landing pattern, and that's why looking at the winds on the runway are kind of helpful. Now you've got a direction that you took off, and you're probably pretty good at understanding that compass point for that direction of landing if it's low, off-field kind of an emergency. So once we get to about 3,000 feet, it's probably a good idea to look at the conditions around you. I especially like jumping on the island when it's a little bit chilly because you get these awesome layers of clouds. They're broken, but they give you a great indication of what altitude those clouds are at. So if you see them go by at 4,500 feet on the way up, guess where they're going to be on the way down? It's going to be a good reminder if you've gapped out and you're having such fun with your friends. You know, oh, right, that layer of clouds is at 4,500 feet. I should be at this point in my skydive or leaving it or whatever. So I always tell my students it's a good idea to sort of check on, hey, look at that layer of clouds at 6,000. What's that mean to you on the way down? And it gives you an idea about some other layer of awareness, which is good. We're not always fixated on our altimeters on the way down. Well, we used to be. So like I said, altitude markers can be really good. But they can also be useful and dangerous, right? If you see thick layers of clouds and you're around breakoff height, that might be something to consider on the skydive too. So not just inside the plane, but outside. Now you're 4,000 to 5,000 feet on the way up. It's time for old people like me to sleep. Get your mental rehearsal in there, relaxation, gain some confidence, and really go through that repetition and hopefully not brain locking what you're going to do with your group there. So it's also a good idea during that rehearsal to be aware of your emergency procedures and, of course, clearly understand what and where. I also like to run through a couple of what ifs. Okay, I haven't had a bag lock ever. What would I do if that happened? It's good to have that rehearsal process and sort of front of mind and ready to go. If you're mindful of, oh, gee, I've got this type of situation, how would I deal with it? It's going to give you a forewarned and forearmed sort of mentality to that. So rehearsing EPs on the ground is great, but just visualizing that skydive from the door open till when your feet land and having a couple of avenues to think about is always really good. Couple of malfunction wild cards are always really good to draw. So you've relaxed and you're up to about 6,000 feet. Plan for some unusuals just in case and keep your mind on them. Also, you should be checking everybody's equipment, just having a little glance here and there. If you're an experienced jumper, keep an eye on your novice colleagues. If you're looking at tandems or filming tandems, that's a great way for you to be aware and be a partner and a colleague with your tandem instructor. There's lots of things on everybody's minds, and everybody can use another set of eyes and things like that. I think Monica mentioned this, and I'm going to just bring it up again. Hacky sacks are pretty easy to lose in the back of a pocket if you're in a Cessna. So of course we want to be mindful of that. We do our 3 checks and everything before we're going to get up and get kicked out. So while we're in the airplane, there are a couple of aircraft unusuals. Of course, we could spend hours on that, but it's good to know kind of what the kind of things are to be aware of. Some of the things that happen a lot are weather related. So you've decided you're going to go to 10,000 and all of a sudden your skydive changes because you're stuck at a layer of 8,000 or something like that. So be aware of that. And conditions like the weather can be things like that. Mechanical aircraft considerations, students or jumpers with varying states of mind, and even for visiting jumpers that may or may not know the drop zone's orientation. So be mindful for that and sort of look out and be a help along that. I think it's a good idea for all of us, especially in busy airspace. We're not out in the middle of the prairies. We have a lot of things going on at all levels. We've had the Skyvan being chased by an Airbus because it was on final into Vancouver. We've had helicopters transiting at low altitudes. We've got float planes all over the place. As an instructor with lots of experience at low altitudes, I am really good at picking aircraft out when they're moving, and canopies. So if we've got 2 aircraft up in the air, Cessnas both, it's a great idea to know how to see canopies. And once you lock on them, you're going to be able to see them. So any altitude of around 6,000 and higher, it's a great idea to be able to look for aircraft that are transiting through our airspace and things like that. So helicopters are cool, but they're sure scary when you look at them from above. So make sure you're aware of things like that. And canopies, you know, like I said, if someone's had a deployment above 6,000, 7,000 feet, it's good to know that those people are there and we can have an eye on them. So all kinds of aircraft unusuals can be filtered through, but use your imagination and get a progression of, okay, so what would be useful? And the longer you've been in the sport, the more you sort of see that you don't know as much as you think you do. Any aircraft emergency is not your decision. An aircraft emergency is going to be declared by the person flying the plane, the person who's in charge. And there's plenty of time to calmly let the pilot assess the situation and make a determination. So they're going to give you a command. Hey, guess what? We're at 6,000 feet. I'd like everybody to calmly and slowly make an exit. Again, there's no RW on these emergency exits. That would be the great time to calmly follow instructions. What a great idea. You've been paying attention as to your location. You may or may not be anywhere near the drop zone. So clear and pull or a couple seconds is probably a good idea. Gives you lots of time to find a real good place to land. Find the biggest, largest open field, land in the middle of it. And remember, the lowest jumper may be the person who's setting the pattern. So don't do anything unpredictable. Fly stable and steady and commit to your landing area and have a nice safe area. Try to land together, of course, so that when the van's looking for you, you can all be safe and together. Obviously, if it's an exit, you're going to do a quick handles check, harness check, and clear and pull, get out. You're going to control your canopy and very quickly decide where to land. Make predictable, safe flight inputs, and like I said, people might want to follow you. Time to land with the plane. Well, guess what? You're going to fasten up your seatbelt, follow the pilot's instructions, stay as still as you can, and just hang in there with your seatbelts on. And pilots are good at landing planes with or without people in them. No movements. Wait till the plane comes to a full stop, and then follow instructions and what the pilots have. Now, the final part, the fun part, is our 3x3 handles check. The door's open, the spot is good. Always a great idea to stick your head out there and look for the aforementioned helicopters, float planes, canopies, anything that's in the airspace. We certainly want to be in our own area. We want to make sure that we've got clear skies. Make certain, so plan your dive your plan. Try not to change anything on going out the door. Have a look at the spot, and of course, you should be familiar with the drop zone and have a good idea where you're going to be. Make sure your exit's okay with the pilot. So maybe you've got something creative that you want to do. Don't spring it on the pilot just after he's opened the door. If you want to toe hang off the strut or something like that for your Facebook profile picture, that's fine, but it's nice when the pilot knows about it. Obviously, if you're climbing out in groups, that's a great time for you to grab somebody's handles by mistake. If you're sitting in the V, a lot of pilots don't even like that. A lot of pilots don't know why they shouldn't like that. but sitting in the B can be a little bit dangerous if somebody grabs your handle and your reserve pilot chute goes up over the leading edge of the wing. We're all in a bit of trouble. So be mindful of that. Make sure your handles are put away nicely and stowed, and you're not grabbing stuff that you don't need to grab on the way by. Dump your exits out and go have a fun skydive. Again, larger aircraft, center of gravity is pretty important. Everybody's excited about the Skyvan. Everyone loves it, and we just need to be mindful and make sure we don't make our pilot's life even more difficult by rushing to the tail or doing things like that. It is really difficult for him when we do those kinds of things. Stay behind the red line, wait for your group, and then go and have fun. Like I said, look below if you can. Count and motion. Everybody wants to have a coordinated exit. Be quick, but not too fast. Don't be slow. There's others behind you. Be mindful of your pace. If you haven't done it, remember that larger aircraft have got faster air speeds. I've been on planes where people didn't know that, and out of the Hercules, people's containers were opening and goggles were coming off because it was 160 miles an hour, and it was a big surprise. So be mindful that you're going to get that airspeed right away. And also it covers the ground more quickly. So if you're taking your time and being slow, you're going to need a quarter or something to make a phone call to get you home. There may be load masters and things like that. So they might be the ones telling you when it's time to go. Sometimes you have lights on larger aircraft that tells you. We had a little confusion, I think it was last year, where the light was on and then it was off and we weren't really sure what to do. So that was a really unusual situation. So we want to think about what did we learn from that occasion where the light came on and then it went off, and did that mean go, or were we going around? So there's some stuff that we should probably consider that might be plan B, because everyone's excited. Everybody behind you wants you to get the hell out of that plane. You may not be able to, and that's what we have to be aware of. Separation, of course, in a Cessna, it takes a little less time, a little more time to cover the sky, so you can wait a little longer, but bigger planes with the airspeed means you may want to, leave your exits a little closer together. If you're good enough and you're aware enough, have a quick peek down so you know you're not too far off. You're not going to get your flotation gear out. And then just be aware, check around, and help your people around you have a good time. My last thing is the CSPA site has got lots of fantastic and updated information. If it's been a while since you've had a license, if it's been a while since you've been through those, it's great to revisit them, and fantastic resources, both digital and stuff like that, right? So if you haven't had PIMS in a long time, what the fuck did you do during the pandemic? We broke Netflix, and everybody had all the programs and all that kind of stuff were all done. So I hope everyone has a great season. I hope we can all see each other in the sky. And I'd like to thank Allison and Gord for inviting me to present. And another year around the sun, still here having a good time skydiving, and can't wait to see you guys all in pre-fall. So let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. Pete, thank you very, very much. Always a pleasure. I love your humor when it's added in there. Does anyone have any questions for Pete or anything about the plane, that portion of it? No, we're good. All right.